There had to be at least 50 of the bizarre people standing in our way as Natalie and I tried to decide what to do next. "We should go back to the station," she muttered. A soft, brisk wind was picking up. "We can do this. Remember, we only need one," I told her as I gestured toward the main thoroughfare and declared, "That path should take us straight through the town. The motel has a feed that connects to KTHU. If we can lure one of them there, we can use the signal to paralyze them." "You make it sound so easy," she said dryly as the group of townsfolk began to advance. "We could do this. Just don't stop driving," I told her, as I got one of the guns loaded and added, "I watch the back." Natalie gripped the steering wheel a little more firmly as the wind picked up and I heard a crackle of thunder across the sky. Another storm was beginning to brew. We needed to act fast. Shifting back into first gear, the blonde let the tires spin for a second, then accelerated head-on into the line of people. Our speed kept climbing as the line simply stood there, staring oddly at our vehicle like it was something that they had never seen before. Abruptly, the crowd began to move as one, pushing their way towards the weather van with their teeth gnashing. Several of them leapt up nearly 30 feet in the air and landed smack on the van's roof as Natalie plowed into the line. I cocked the rifle and aimed it towards the roof as the ones that had managed to latch on started to try and claw their way inside. I let the first round out, blasting a bullet straight through the old man's skull as he shrieked to claw at me. Then Natalie turned a corner and the next two fell off. It wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. More townsfolk had gathered as we drove down the main street towards the motel. It actually surprised me to see so many of them there. Did they all come with a storm? Several skittered across rooftops and buildings, almost like roaches, and I pushed myself up to the roof to take aim and keep the van safe. Reloading the rifle, I fired another shot as one of the jumpers flew across the town square. "We're coming up on the motel," Natalie said. There was at least a dozen younger athletic men waiting that stood in our way. A glance at the speedometer told me that we had already reached 55 miles an hour, but the way these newcomers were looking, something told me it wasn't going to be enough. "Give it all she's got," I told Natalie, as I fired a shot at the closest male. The bullet didn't even seem to faze him. 75 miles an hour. We slammed hard against the row of dangerous townsfolk, just like they were a brick wall. I fell on the floor of the van, the rifle sliding out to the parking lot. In a matter of seconds, they were on us. One male reached with his muscular arms and tried to pry the back door open as I stood and kicked him off. Then I grabbed the next gun and told Natalie, "Stay here." I aimed the weapon straight at the next attacker's skull. His brain splashed everywhere as the blonde shouted for me to stay put. Instead, I made a run for it, pushing my way to the motel room that I had stayed in a few nights before. They were right behind me, screeching like banshees and clawing at the ground for any chance to hook me. Seconds later, I turned the TV on and Channel 46 started working its magic. But these things, I don't know why, it didn't seem to work. They were affected by the strong noise, but they kept coming. I fired at the next one, trying to enter the room as Natalie turned the van back around. I only had 6 bullets left. I raised my weapon to fire again, and then heard the most peculiar horn in the world. It sounded like a jingle of some kind. The creatures heard it too, and the group moved to see where it was coming from. A short second later, a long camper trailer smashed into the dozen and crushed them under its wheels. I kept my gun steady as the camper spun its wheel around and knocked out the other stragglers that were thrashing at the hotel windows. Then, from the driver's door, a familiar face flashed. Caleb. He hopped out and went to check on the weather van first, grabbing his tow line and muttering under his breath as Natalie tried to apologize. "You can save it for when we're back at the station," he snarled as he checked the tires and then hooked up the cable. I looked towards the thoroughfare, noticing more of the townsfolk clawing their way out of the abandoned buildings. "We should, probably get in the camper," I advised Natalie. A few moments later, the swarm of crazed people were on us, running towards the camper as one. Caleb took out his twin pistols and began to fire as he climbed back into the driver's seat and shouted, "Hold on to something!" The long trailer jerked backwards. A few of the townsfolk bounced off the windshield like bugs as we drove in reverse down the highway. The weather van lurched and moaned against the road as it was dragged down the street. Caleb shouted instructions to us as more of them latched to the side of the trailer, banging repeatedly on the metal. "The signal! Put it to frequency 10!" he shouted. I didn't even hesitate. The piercing sound was enough to knock them all off the camper, and then, as we drove, I saw more of them collapse in a state of shock. Caleb shouted excitedly and declared, "Take that, you sons of bitches!" I looked towards Natalie and then at the syringe that we had somehow managed to keep hold of. I gave her a look, but before she had a chance to guess what I was thinking, I opened up the side door to the trailer and jumped to the road. I hit the ground running as I heard Caleb shout another colorful expression, and I moved towards one of the shrieking townsfolk. Standing right over top of them, I got the syringe ready and plunged it straight into their neck. Caleb swung the camper back around, the broadcast still causing its lulling effect to the others, as the one I had drugged went still. "The hell is wrong with you, Pruitt?" the hunter snapped as he pulled the camper up alongside me. "You can berate me later. Right now we need to radio Jim and tell him to set up for a transfusion." He said a few more curse words, and then helped me lift the man into the camper as Natalie got the next syringe ready and injected it in the other side. "You really think that wasn't enough?" I said as we drove out of town. "Better safe than sorry," she said with a nervous laugh. We'd made it. Now it was just a matter of getting to Martin in time. Back in the station, I saw Olivia waiting for us as we pulled in, and Nat closed the garage. She walked over and slapped me across the face. Then she turned toward Caleb and said, "Let's get it on the stretcher." I rubbed my cheek softly and followed behind as we carried the unconscious man to the bunker. Martin's screams of pain filled the air as we got closer. Inside the closed quarters, Lasher was already setting up another IV as we lugged the man on the bed next to Martin. "You already got one," he said, pausing for a moment to marvel at the creature that hid beneath human skin. "Doc, maybe we could speed this up?" I suggested. He nodded and got to work setting up a pick line in the creature's neck. Natalie was biting at her nails as Martin kept screaming. Caleb and Olivia lingered near the door, unable to watch. The cameraman writhed and screamed even louder as the transfusion began. A slow drip of the creature's blood pumped into his own. "You really think this will work?" Natalie whispered. "It has to," I said, taking her hand and squeezing it as Martin kept begging for death. An agonizing 13 minutes later, we could see the first signs of success. The strange dark scars near his wound were clearing up. He was calming down. The antivenom inside the creature was doing the trick. I told you, I said excitedly. And then noticed that Olivia had left the room. Caleb was still there, though, looking no more happy than the minute he had met me. "Congratulations. Looks like you'll live to fight another day," he said, tipping his hat and departing. Is that his way of saying, "Job well done"? It was another 6 before Lasher confirmed it. "He's gonna still need some rest, but I think he'll make it," he said. Natalie leapt and cried excitedly, hugging me and then rushing to Martin's side. I smiled, pleased with the good deed, and after another moment, let them have their privacy. I wandered the corridors of the station for a moment, still feeling my heart pumping loudly from the rush we had experienced in town. I wanted to go find Kearney, rub it in his face that I had proved him wrong, but instead I found myself going to the roof. The darkness was still casting its shadow over all the Emerald Bay, and the storm I had spotted earlier was now getting ready to drop its first bit of rain. The wind picked up, and I looked out towards the city and towards the horizon, still trying to make sense of everything that I'd seen since coming here. Behind me, I heard a lurching noise and turned to see Olivia stepping out of the stairwell to join me. She was smoking one of her father's cigarettes and letting her long, dark hair rustle in the wind as we stood together silently. "You did good work out there, Pruitt," she said, looking at me. For a moment our eyes met, and then she rubbed her neck uncomfortably and remarked, "Dad said you should know that." "Too stubborn to tell me himself," I said. "He doesn't want you to get a big head," Olivia pointed out, and then remarked, "By the sound of things, it's probably too late for that, though." I sighed and remarked, "Look, I'm sorry about what happened with your mom, but that's no reason for you to just give up on people." Her soft, admiring gaze quickly turned to one of rage. "What do you know about my mother?" she asked accusingly. I hesitated, realizing I had struck a nerve, and raised my hands defensively. "I know it was hard, what you went through, but all I'm saying is that it may be time for you and your old man to move on, and that's the truth." She dropped the cigarette and pushed herself right up in my face, jabbing a finger to my chest. "Don't you ever talk about my mother. And don't presume to know me. You don't know what the hell I've been through." She smacked me across the cheek again, and then growled, "And if I ever hear you say anything about her again, so help me, I'll make sure Caleb blows your head off." She turned away and stood at the opposite corner of the roof as I quickly shuffled my head, embarrassed for using such poor words. As we stood there, the rain began to fall, and she finished her cigarette before remarking, "Don't stay out here too much longer, or the storm will get you." I nodded absently, glancing towards Emerald Bay again, and something amid the tree line caught my eye. "Olivia?" I said, catching her attention before she went back inside. I think we might have a problem." She walked over to where I stood to get a better look, her eyes widening as she saw the large group of maddened townsfolk bounding through the trees, coming straight for the station. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I wanted to tell you thank you so much for watching today's video, or listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. We're at the hottest time of the year. I don't know how you guys deal with it, but for me, I like iced tea. And my wife sells tea, not the ice, but the tea part's there. The ice you can get on your own. Head over to etsy.com/shop/ivorymonocletea and check out some of the tea that my wife makes. There's even one that is my personal favorite. It's an incredibly strong tea called the Dark and Stormy Night. And if you ask, you can get a little dabbing MCP sticker that I made that she said would not look good on the bottle. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody who's out there on the Patreon, patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta. So a big thank you to Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Stephanie Butler, Reaper61167, Bobby Karman, Tristain Pelton, Chance Burnett, Diana Kraus, Atomaurus, Grand Moth the Milky, Big Smoke 369, Michael Mcivor, Captain Scurvy, SaltyIrishPoet, Estebean, Brayden Morris, Nate Kuhl, HorrorFan1212, hourminsec, Kyle Reznak, David Martin, scare-ington the unkempt, Robert Malcolm, Angelus, Spanky, Snoochie Boochies, Seclude, Lupita Galvan, That Creepy Chick, Tyler Fletcher, Merxenham, Red Shadowcat, Xavier the Cheyenne, Demix, Shawn Cadieu-baker, 6 Gay Rats in a Trenchcoat, Turtleman, Rob Like Sharp Thing, Chaos Arts, Cryolinian, Xavier Graffius, Lord Life's Best, Goreng Trimagasi, Maria Walker, Emily Mitchell, Crazy Kid, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Ika Limchok, Dirt Diver 030, Matt Bach, Voice of Sand, Coffee Zombie, Hidden Tiger, Shelly J, Jeremy H, Psychomel, Nana, Deleted Account, Melted Lake, Tully Sue, William King, David Miver, Michael Ortiz, Satanic Aries, Bardo Hawk 764, Lambda M98, Harley, Sashi Suzaku, Cronut 509, Kaylee Ambrose, Suji Campbell, Stricket, Azarine Fox, Freddy Krueger, Happy Birthday Jason Wilson, Lisa Cottrell, Caspian, Hades' Nephew, Tater Chip, Acid System, Prozac and Pancake Appreciation Society, Benjamin Welvert, Here with the Sloth, Fester's Lampshade, Sky Harbor, Nico Kyle, Rafael Rodriguez, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, and Corey Kenshin. My goodness, the list is getting long. But hey, I appreciate all of you. And to everybody who watches and subs and likes and leaves comments and does all those things, sweet dreams.